Good morning, everyone. So my name is Gabriel. I work for Braintree. So Braintree is a PayPal company since 4 years now. At Braintree, I'm taking care of the whole startup market across Europe. So working with companies like the family, but also VCs, strategic startups, helping them to grow and scale their business, but also giving them best practices on how they can optimize their checkout to make sure that they have the best experience. So today what I'd like to do with you is explaining how you can optimize your checkout, giving you some tips, but also giving you a little bit of tips on what's happening in the commerce space as well. There's a lot of stuff happening today beyond payments. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what we see in the market today by working with a bunch of businesses across different platforms, being mobile first or desktop or tablet, right? So I think that the first thing I'd like to start to discuss is obviously mobile is part of our everyday life, right? So we're using our mobile pretty much throughout the day, at any time of the day. I think on this slide there is some interesting stats here. 34% of people are using their mobile even when they're during the night. 32 are checking their mobile 5 minutes after they wake up, and 80% of them are using their mobile while they're talking to friends, right? So we're using our mobile every day. However, there is an interesting stat here, is that we are spending a lot of time on our mobile, but a lot of us are not buying on mobile. So there is what we call a commerce gap here. All right, so people are browsing on their mobile, they're checking their mobile every day, but when it comes to buying, most of the time they go on their desktop, right? So almost 8 out of 10 consumer, and this is across platform, will drop out. We call that cart abandonment rate. And this is actually quite high across different markets. I don't know if can you see well? Yeah, cool. That's basically the status of what's happening with mobile. And what I want to do before jumping into very specific tips is give you a brief overview of what's happening in the commerce space. So not only in the payment space, but in the commerce space as a whole. So we see different trends happening. So obviously there is a shift in user behavior. So users are now, using, and that's why those percentage on mobile are high. They're spending a lot of time, in a messaging app, social apps, right? And they are defining themselves the way they want to actually buy online. So they're basically defining the pillars of the ecosystem, of the e-commerce ecosystem. And we're also moving, and I'm going to go in details into this last point, from intent buying to contextual buying. And this is probably something you haven't really heard before, but we're moving into what we call contextual commerce. Also, mobile now is here. It's granted, right? So the next step beyond mobile is the contextual buying that I'm going to explain in a few minutes. And of course, there's new payment methods. There is new players in the market of the of Apple Pay, Android Pay, or some companies like Venmo in the US, right? And users now are used to paying one click. They want to pay in one click. So the one-click payment aspect of things is sort of digested by the users. So they're used to that experience, right? So just to explain a little bit more what we mean by contextual commerce, right? So I think today, basically, you need to meet the consumer where they are, where they want to buy, right? At the moment where they're ready to buy, or at the moment where they're actually looking at your product. And that's basically beyond your own app or beyond your own website. There is new purchase opportunities out there that you can tackle with contextual commerce, right? So basically, with contextual commerce, what you should do is imagine new commerce experiences, right? New ways of meeting your consumer where they are. And I think a good example of that is what we've done with Pinterest. So with Pinterest, we created what we call the buyable pins, right? So in the past, users on Pinterest were basically, saving an item on their pin board, and then when they wanted to buy the item, they had to go on the website of the merchant, right? With the buyable pins, what we allowed them to do is actually buy directly in the context of Pinterest. So we're sort of blending two experiences together. And we've done that, of course, with Pinterest, but also Facebook, Skyscanner, and some other companies out there. So it's basically allowing your consumer to buy when they want to buy. And I think a good example of that is what has been done with the Messenger. So there is some sound normally here, but basically in the US, Facebook Messenger and Uber users can directly buy in the context of Facebook, right? So you're in Messenger talking to your friends, and you can directly choose to order an Uber in the context of Facebook Messenger and buy it from there, right? So this is basically allowing, the users of both apps to stay in one environment, and it allows like both businesses to provide new experiences to their users. All right. So I think today where we see like contextual commerce being pretty big in the social media space, right? But this is, the first step. And what we think that's going to be the next step is what we call like voice commerce, basically, where you're going to be able to buy directly from services like Alexa or Google Home, directly buying by talking to a device or to like an AI device. And the next step, of course, is blending contextual commerce within virtual reality, mixed reality, and augmented reality, where you're going to be able to, in a store, using those technology, directly buy in the context of this virtual store. So I think for me, that was like, just a sneak peek of what can you do? Okay, what should be the long-term view for any businesses today, right? Definitely, you have your business, but what you should be looking next, right? So I'm not saying you should do this now, but this should be on top of your head when thinking of building your business. Obviously, you can come me anytime, ask me questions. I'm not giving a class here. It's just like literally giving you advice, right? So what can you do today, right? As a business, what can you do today to optimize your checkout experience? There is like three things that you can use to optimize your experience. There is the data you have and you're gathering. There's obviously the user interface, and there is security, right? So basically, serving your customer is really important, right? And you should know who they are, how they behave, right? So there's different ways of sort of mapping that out, right? I'm not going to go into details, but you have the early adopters, you have the digital native, you have like the consumer that are more reluctant to actually use like different payment methods, right? You should know who they are, and you can actually do that, and I'm sure you all do, by tracking a few KPIs on your website or mobile app, being time on site, number of users, location, traffic source, abandonment rate, new versus returning customers. And if we look at the first data, which is location, only that data can help you optimize your checkout experience. And how is that? When basically knowing the location, you can know which language you should have on your platform, right? You can know also the presentment currency you should have, and as well as the payment methods. So what do I mean by presentment currency? If you have like a high percentage of your customer which are buying in Europe but also in the US or in the UK, you should have the right currency, and this would give the consumer a feeling that he's buying on a businesses that is in his location in the currency he wants. And this is something we do, and this is quite simple to see how it looks like, right? So here Go Euro, which is one of a Braintree merchant, has UK GBP as a presentment currency, and they're also showing the right payment methods. So in the UK or in Germany, card is, especially in Germany actually, card is not that high. Consumer like to pay with PayPal, for example. So having those right payment methods will help this business to convert better. The user will see the currency he wants and the payment methods he wants. And this is something that you can do only by knowing the location of your customer. The next thing that you can get from getting those by looking at those data is track where the consumer dropping out, understand which design aspects are impacting your checkout experience, and you can then tailor accordingly your experience to make sure that there is no friction point in the whole checkout process, or even like in the whole consumer experience, right? So this leads me to the next point, user interface. This is probably like the most important part of this this small presentation, right? You should understand now and act now on what makes your consumer tick. What are the friction points? And this comes back to the next slide, where you should know which are the friction points. So the first thing that we see a lot is, when a business is sort of obliging their users to enter their email address and create a profile. This is something you can certainly do, like, later on the process, or even the next time the consumer is coming on your platform. We see that there's like 35 of abandonment if the consumer is forced to register. So there is ways of going around that, right? You can, of course, give the option to your consumer to create an account, but you can also allow him or her to continue as a guest, right? You're gonna have his email address later on anyway in the whole checkout experience. So it's actually well appreciated by the consumer, where they can continue as a guest, and then where they don't have to enter like bunch of information to continue buying on your platform. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So if we give like extra discounts or bonuses, if it's gonna basically, yeah, I mean, we haven't done any like specific research, but I can have a look with some of my colleagues. But I guess obviously, like the logic answer would be yes, it will increase conversion, but also like the less distraction and the less like friction point you're gonna have in your checkout, the better. But I don't have like specific data on that. But we can take that offline. I can have a look with some of my teammates for sure. But I think on that point is there is ways of improve your experience by doing only a small improvement, and that's one of these improvements, right? Guest checkout will allow you to convert better and to reduce friction for your customer. And this is another example of how a guest checkout can look like in a real context, right? Transparency. So your customer will go through a bunch of steps, and giving them transparency of where they are in the purchasing process is also something that will give them confidence that they're about to complete the whole experience, right? So there's different way of doing that, and it's not something that's actually quite complicated, right? In this example, which is from one of our merchants in France, for example, they're showing where they are in the whole process, from shipping to billing to confirm. This is really clear. It's extremely simple for you to have that on your platform, on your mobile or desktop, and it will again give an understanding of where the consumer is and give them a sense of confidence and reduce friction for them. The next thing that we want to stress, and I want to stress here, is make sure that you don't have any generic explanation on your website or a mobile app. Making sure that you have clear call to actions so that the consumer know exactly what they want to do, right? And what they have to do. So, for example, in the case of a Uber type of business, a clear call to action would be request a car. So avoid any generic description to reduce friction for your consumer. So again, for like this small code that we have behind the card, which is called a CVV, making sure that you have label like short description, because not all users know exactly what they have to do when they have to enter the credit card details. So avoid any generic error message. Explain to your consumer what's happening and why in some cases their card is not accepted. So all that is like a few tips again to reduce friction, give sense of security, give sense of comfortness to your users when they are on your platform or mobile app. And to give you an example of how that look like, this is an example of a startup here in Germany called TripRebel, right? So they can, it's extremely simple for the users to go through the whole process by, choosing the room they want to have, choosing to pay, and then confirm the payments, right? It's extremely simple, it's clear, and it's tailored to mobile as well in that case. Clear call to action is something really important for you guys, especially, and this is a cross-platform, but especially if it's on mobile. So the thing is, like, consumer don't have the time to go through a bunch of explanation. When you're on your mobile, even though you're spending a lot of time on it, you receive messages, you're like on the way, you're walking, you're in the tube, you're eating, so you don't have time to go through a complicated experience, right? So adapt to device. This is critical on mobile. Payment is an activity that takes, too much time, especially on mobile. So make sure that you have an optimized experience. Make sure that the optimize is frictionless and as easy as possible. And this goes from the experience, but also to the speed of your platform, right? 1 second delay will cost 7% of conversion, and this number is increasing as the delay is increasing, right? And so this is also an aspect that you should take into consideration when building your platform, making sure that you have the less steps as possible and the fastest checkout as possible. So to give you a concrete example, right, of a mobile experience and how you can optimize things, here is a non-optimized checkout experience. At first sight, it looks actually quite good, right? But here you can see that there is 8 steps to completion, right? So 8 steps to actually buy the product, but also 5 points of abandonment. So 5 points where the consumer can actually leave the app or the website. And also what we call 3 application redirect, all right? So the application redirect would be, for example, 3DS. Those 3D secure is when you're about to buy and you have this extra layer of security from Visa or MasterCard where you have to enter your private code. Are you guys familiar with that? Yeah. So, and then you have this first redirect, then the users receive a text message from his bank, and then he has to re-enter that in the mobile app. And this is happening outside the app on the web browser, right? So how you can make sure that you optimize all that. So there's different things you can do to optimize this whole non-optimized experience. You can do what we call card validation. So in the previous screen, the users had to choose the card, right? It has to go through, scroll down through like a list of different cards. Today, with our technology, for example, you can actually directly understand which card the user is planning on using. By entering the first couple of numbers, we can know which card is being used. But then you can also directly validate that card. All right? So during the first step, you can directly validate if the card number is correct. And this is also the case for the CVV, which has to be clear, but also the date and any other information that would be entered by the customer. We call that direct validation, right? So rather than going through a different step and then press continue, and the users then will get a message saying you have an error in this part of the checkout, you can directly validate all that. The second thing to making sure, yeah, sure. So when I call validation is validating if the card number is correct. So you can do some mistake when you're entering your card number, right? You can forget a number, or I don't know, miss one digit. We can directly check if the card is correct. This is working with our API specifically.
No, but you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll explain that in a sec. To explain how basically I'm pretty sure you're talking about the. Yeah, so we have that in context. So I explain you exactly how it works and how you can still have this security check, but in the context of your app or website. So I'll explain that in a sec, how things work. So the next thing that can help optimize this previous experience is showing the right keyboard at the right time. And you might be like, what is he talking about? When you're about to enter your credit card number or your date or like your security code, you're going to enter numbers, right? And in a lot of cases, when you're on mobile, what's being shown is a non-numerical keyboard. And this is, again, a point of friction that is actually really simple to add to your experience and to to optimize for your consumer to have less friction as possible, right? So showing the right keyboard at the right time is also something that will help you convert better. And the next step is, today, as I said before, like users are used to single-click payments. So having the ability for them to register their favorite payment methods, so the next time they come on your platform and they can pay with the payment methods they want, is something that is also going to help you optimize your experience, right? So with all those small tips, we're moving from a 5-step experience to a 4-step experience, right? So showing the right payment methods, validating the card directly, allowing your customer to save their favorite payment methods is going to help you convert better, and it's going to help you to have the least step possible in your whole customer experience. I'm going to go into the details of how you can optimize security now to answer your specific question. So the last step I'd like to discuss is security. Is there any question until now, or is it clear? Yeah? Cool. It's actually probably, the point I discussed before important, right? But giving your customer a sense of trust on your platform is probably the most important thing you'll have to do to make sure that you convert, right? And this is even higher when it comes to payments. So there's different ways you can do that. Again, these are not complicated ways of doing it. The first one is just 3D Secure, all right? And this is accepted not in all markets, but in some markets it's well accepted, right? So it's basically this extra layer of security that you add when you're about to pay. I'll explain how you can optimize that. The second one is the payment methods and the brands you're showing on your website. Today, to give you an example, in Germany, PayPal is well accepted and it gives a sense of trust to users, right? So having the right brands is definitely something that will help you give a sense of trust and security to your customer. So in the case of Visa or MasterCard 3D Secure, what we allow customers to do and merchants to do is to have this experience but in context. So rather than being redirected on another platform or on another page or outside the app, what we allow them to do is to keep that in their experience, in the environment of their app, in the environment of their website. So you keep control of that as a merchant, right? To reduce the friction and the redirect to your customer. So an example here, this is from our test platform. The 3D Secure step is completely in the context of the website. It's optimized for desktop, it's optimized for mobile, and you don't have any redirect on another in another website browser, for example. If you take the other side of the table with the merchant, right? So that was for the consumer. What you should do as a merchant is have the right fraud detection in place. There is different criteria you can have a look when optimize your experience and looking at security on your platform. And so you should basically work on the right fraud strategy, and we can have a chat offline about what we're proposing and what can be done specifically in that space. Being PCI compliance, any business today that accept payments online have to meet some requirements regarding a PCI compliance, right? We allow you to do that as well, basically by not sending you raw card numbers, but by doing what we call tokenization, right? And tokenization will also allow you to save the card or save the PayPal account to create one-click payment in the second step. So, the trust comes from the user side of things, but also you as a merchant, how you should basically work out the security on your platform depending on the product that you're selling and to whom you're selling it. So basically, all those small tips will allow you to have a simple, secure, and fast experience. Right? And those are not complicated stuff you can do. It's actually really simple tips, and that was my goal today. Giving you sort of a long-term vision of what's happening in the commerce space, and then giving you concrete examples of what you can optimize specifically to make sure that you have the least friction possible on your platform. All that will allow you to achieve one goal, to make a payment disappear. And I'm talking concrete here. You can make payment disappear like Uber or Airbnb made payment disappear, right? Where the user is using the service, enjoying your platform, but they don't actually even think of paying, right? And this is possible to any startup, any founders, any business in this room, right? So, yeah. Well, we can have a chat. I told you we'll have a chat offline. Yeah. Now, this is actually possible with the tokenization aspect of things, asking for the card number in some cases when the consumer is creating his profile, or even the first time they are arriving on your platform. All that is possible, right? It's possible to you. It's possible to any startup in Europe or in the world with Braintree. So my goal today was how you can optimize your payment experience today to become contextual commerce tomorrow, become contextual tomorrow, right? So how you can optimize small things today to achieve this long-term vision tomorrow. So I'm here. I'm going to stay for a bit. I'm open to question now. If you have any question, please feel free to ask anything.
I'll come back to the question of the gentleman on the first row. So we saw how you deal with 3D Secure in a contextual way. That was very nice. I haven't seen that before. However, sometimes while using, for example, Amazon or while paying with EasyJet website, like my card is by default using 3D Secure. But on those two websites, there are no 3D Secure. So they skip this step. How is that possible? Or can you comment on that, please?
It's actually the merchant who's deciding if they want to activate 3D Secure. So it's on the merchant side.
So it's not on the card side. So it's not on my bank side whether they want to do the 3D Secure or not.
No, the merchant will activate that step. Yeah.
So it's like the fraud security from the merchant.
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
First of all, just from a UX point of view, I guess I'd maybe make a couple of suggestions. One, they're kind of related. One is you want to make sure that you're not being charged at various points. So as an example, if you're buying a flight, I think EasyJet was mentioned, I'm always really, really panicky that I've somehow clicked the wrong day or the wrong location. And I think Ticketek and a few others have your card will not be charged yet. Your card will not be charged yet. And likewise, right at that step when you are about to be charged, I'd like to see just, not the whole details, but some tiny details of you are going on this date, these locations, just because I go and then I want to scroll back up. I do have a question though. Have you got any research or thoughts on the size of the purchase? So 10 years ago when payments started coming into the web, we wouldn't buy a car using desktop, let alone mobile, obviously, which is now. And if we're not ready to buy, is there any way that merchants can kind of try and manage that?
So to the first point, having a sort of a recap of the basket is definitely something that we advise on doing. And I was doing another presentation a couple of weeks ago with one of my PayPal teammates, and we were actually talking about the whole customer journey and how you can optimize things. So that's a really good point. On the last question, which is, so can you repeat that last question?
It's a little bit of a hard question to ask, I guess. People, I presume, aren't going to buy a new car for 20,000 euros on mobile. Maybe there's a better example, which is smaller. If you know that people aren't going to buy on mobile, but they're prepared to buy on desktop when they're sitting down later, is there kind of like a bank vault type thing you'd encourage, or?
I mean, so you could basically vault the card on a mobile website or app, which will then when the consumer will go on desktop, will log in, the card will be vaulted, and then the decision and the decision process is still the same, but the experience will be as simple as clicking buy. So that's something you could do. Obviously, then in the case of a car, I guess some other payment alternative could be applied, credit or some aspect like this. Yeah,
I think it's being transferable between devices might be the kind of answer I'm seeking. But
potentially.
Think a lot.
Thanks for the great presentation. And I wanted to ask. In the beginning, you spoke about skipping as much steps as possible.
Or combining steps together.
Yes. So in the most situations, a new user will be needed to register. So most companies would want at least to get the email address. So, and the common step after receiving the email addresses to confirm the email address by sending a code. Or, for example, if you get just the phone number, then you try to confirm the phone number. Would you recommend to skip this step in the checkout process, or like to delay that for 24 hours or something like that?
Yeah, I think, like it really depends on, what's the type of businesses you're having, again. But I think, what we've seen, and from the data I've shown before, adding steps is going to, add friction to your customer, right? Again, depend on your business, but what we've seen is that when you ask them to create a profile to continue the whole purchasing process is, not something that is going to optimize your experience. So this will increase the abandonment rate. I'm not saying, like, in some cases, for example, in a mobile app where it's actually quite clear that, you have to enter your number, or you have to, in some cases, depending on the business, you have to enter your email address. It might actually, if understood, if really clear for the consumer why, it might be something that you want to do. It might be something in some cases that will actually increase conversion, right? So it's really business specific. But from, what we've seen in like e-commerce experiences, adding this point of creating an account is not something that is optimized today. But, it's again, business specific, right? So it's really depending on what you're selling and how you're selling it. So that's my answer. But we can take it offline, explaining, like, I don't know what you're actually doing. Are you working in a specific industry?
Well, we actually recently implemented the checkout API from PayPal on our website. So I'm very interested in some detailed explanations.
Sure.
What about like one-click solution, but for example, like QR code scanning or something like that? Is something like that is available on the market? Like, for example, I have an app.
Yeah.
I don't need to like click on the display. I just make a photo with like QR code, like in my like payment app, and it's just like instantly.
I mean, it's maybe something that is available out there. We specifically do not provide like QR code scanning, but I'm sure it's available out there. How efficient it is, I don't have any data on that, but it's something that I've seen, being used. Actually, I've seen that in Sweden, but so it's something that is available, but not through Braintree and PayPal.
Well, thanks very much, Gabriel. I'm sure you're available for.
I'm going to stay here for a bit, so
this.
you guys can grab me, and I can answer any other question in more details.
Great. Well, thanks.
Que la famille.